Okay, we apologize for the minor delay. My name is Dr. Chris Clayton. This is the first episode of Hypnosis Chat, a weekly show where you can ask questions about hypnosis and we just have a candid conversation. I have with me my beautiful fiancée, Anjali. She is a professional violinist and she is here to help me conduct the show. If you have any questions, feel free to send an email into info@claytonhypnosisclinic.com. I will have my email in front of me, so if you have it, I should get it pretty soon. All right, so to start us off, I think that Anjali had a question for me.
Yes. What exactly is hypnosis? Is it the same as mind control?
That's a good question. I do get that one quite a bit. Hypnosis, first of all, the short answer is hypnosis is not mind control at all. Hypnosis is essentially a state in which you are better able to access your unconscious mind, which is which controls your automatic thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. So if there's something that you do or think or feel automatically that you would like to change, then you can do that through hypnosis. Now, the hypnotherapist cannot force you to make those changes. It's the way I see it. If you can imagine the mind is like a forest with hundreds or thousands of trees, and there's a certain place in the forest that is hypnosis, and the hypnotherapist is essentially the guide that knows how to get there. So he can essentially start going there, and you can follow. And once you're there, you can make these changes happen. He certainly can't force you to go there, and he can't force you to make any changes once you're there. Does that answer that question?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I do get that question a lot. A lot of times, especially if people, sometimes people will say, oh, well, I can't be hypnotized. Whether or not, first of all, everyone can be hypnotized. So, but really what's going on with that comment is that someone is really saying, I can't be controlled. And they're right. They can't be controlled. Hypnosis does not attempt to do that. So, if you've ever heard somebody say, oh, well, I can't be hypnotized, it's almost always because they're really saying, no one can control me. And that's true. Hypnosis is not for weak-minded people. It works for strong-minded people, everyone. So it's essentially a way to help get to that part of the mind that enables you to make changes. Normally in your waking state, it's difficult to change habits that you've had for a long time. But in hypnosis, those thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are much more malleable. The hypnotherapist is able to guide you to make those changes in that state. So, okay, and that answer that question pretty well?
Yes, and actually my second question was,
Mm-hmm.
you answered that swimmingly.
Oh, thank you.
So what sort of problems or things can hypnosis help to solve?
Well, there's basically 4 things that hypnosis can do. Hypnosis can help with behavioral issues, cognitive issues, emotional issues, and I'll give examples of each of these in a second, and some physical issues. Really, they come down to 3 mental issues, which, like behavioral, for example, if you have some behavior that you do repeatedly, whether it's smoking or overeating or nail biting, some kind of physical behavior. And the second is cognitive things such as test taking, memory. If you think that you're not a good test taker, that is probably not the case. It probably is much more accurate to say that your unconscious strategies for test taking are, could use improvement. And that's something that, because it's unconscious, hypnosis is able to do more effectively than if you were in your normal waking state. And finally, it can work with emotional issues, such as anxiety, depression. If you have, excessive, boredom or loneliness or any kind of, emotional state that you don't want to have, you don't have to have it. And hypnosis, and it's actually the result of your patterns of thinking, which hypnosis can kind of reprogram so that you can think, feel, and act like someone who is successful, and you become successful that way. So those are basically the main 3 things. Does that cover that pretty well?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And, a lot of times, really the main things that I work with are helping people to quit smoking, to lose weight, and to help manage anxiety. Anxiety's been really a big one over the last couple years or so. I've been in business for over 16 years now, and for most of that time, most people wanted to do behavioral changes. But over the last few years, it's been probably 80% or more of my clients it's been related to anxiety or stress. And there's a lot of theories on why that's the case, but things related to phobias, people are afraid to drive, maybe the world's getting more stressful. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Well, since you mentioned smoking, can hypnosis be effective for smokers if they really don't want to quit? Say, if someone wants their spouse to quit and they don't really want to.
That's a good question. If you can go back to the analogy of the forest, if you, the hypnotherapist can show you how to get through the forest, but of course you don't have to follow. So, and really it's the exact same thing as taking a medication. For example, if you have a physical disorder and you're given a medication, if you don't take the medication, then it's not going to work. You have to follow instructions. So if you don't want to take the medication and you're the one that's responsible for taking it, then you're not going to take it, and then it's not going to work. It's the exact same thing with hypnosis. I want to make a clear distinction between following instructions and being cooperative versus like a placebo effect. There is no placebo effect in hypnosis any more than there is for medical drugs. The bottom line is, if you have to, in both cases, follow directions, be cooperative, do the instructions to the best of your ability in order for either one of them to work. So definitely not a placebo, but by the same token, it can't be forced on someone. So, if someone said, "Oh, my husband wants to lose weight," I would need to talk to him directly to make sure that he actually wants to lose weight also.
And this is the only effective way to quit smoking. There are other solutions out there.
I definitely think this is the most effective way. Getting an email here. I'll do it. No, we'll do it in a second. I definitely think it's the most effective way. And some people see. Here's the thing. Did you use smoking as an example?
Smoking.
Here. Let me give you. This is the perfect way to explain it. You can force yourself to stop smoking, even though you feel compelled to smoke. And if you don't change that compulsive pattern and you just force yourself to not smoke, like people who don't go through hypnosis but quit smoking, I'd say about maybe 5% of people who try to quit smoking on their own are able to quit smoking and stay non-smokers. But the problem is they have to fight that compulsion for the rest of their lives. So they have to live their whole life as a smoker who is exerting all this mental effort to not smoke. On the other hand, hypnosis actually makes it so that you don't want to smoke anymore. It changes how you feel about smoking. So you see smoking in the same way that you see a drug that you have no interest in. So, and the physical aspects of smoking are maybe 10% of the process. Most of it is mental, and a lot of people are coming to realize that nowadays. But the bottom line is, it changes not just your behavior, but it changes how you perceive cigarettes or drugs or junk food, anything that's bad for you, so that you can perceive it accurately and your brain just doesn't want it anymore. And that's the key thing that hypnosis can do. It can make it so that you can live your life peacefully as a non-smoker. And as a nice side benefit, it's much more successful than trying to do it without. So, part of me wants to say, yes, it's the only effective way. And really, I definitely think that's the case. If I were a smoker, I would absolutely use hypnosis. I wouldn't even consider anything else. I would hightail it to a hypnotherapist and get my perception straight. Yeah, great question. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
welcome.
Yeah. So, did you have another question here while I'm pulling this up?
Oh, sure. I was going to ask about self-hypnosis. Actually, you just mentioned I would see a hypnotherapist. Would you be able to self-hypnotize, or do you need training for that?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, self-hypnosis, really, there's not much difference between hypnotizing someone else and self-hypnosis. You're just giving the instructions to someone else when you're doing hypnotherapy. And hypnosis can be very simple, or it can be very complex, and it doesn't really have to be complex. The biggest thing, if you're at home and you're thinking about trying self-hypnosis, that's great. That's a great thing. Don't get discouraged, because people will I remember when I was young and I was not certified yet, and I didn't know that much about hypnosis. I'd think, I tried to do it, but I don't really think it's working. I don't know. And it's really just like playing the guitar or any other physical skill. It's something that you get better at with time. You will absolutely get good at self-hypnosis if you're trying to do that. Of course, it's great to have an instructor, just as it is for any other skill. But even if you're trying to do it yourself, you will get better at it. It just takes practice. It's really a skill like anything else. And one other thing along those lines, the difference between, so somebody might say, well, what's the difference between hypnosis and meditation? And they're both pretty nebulous terms, and it could be fair to say that they're basically the same thing, except hypnosis includes suggestions. So generally, meditation is for relaxation, clearing your mind, and it's non-directive. There's no, you're not trying to change anything. You're just trying to relax and maybe get centered. Hypnosis has the connotation of being suggestive or therapeutic in nature. So for example, generally you go into hypnosis to accomplish a goal, to get something done. But that's really the main difference between the two. So absolutely, you can learn self-hypnosis on your own. Again, it helps to have a good instructor, and you can get there much more quickly, but either way, it's a great practice.
Because we go through hypnosis every day?
Yes, we do go through hypnosis every day. Hypnosis is not an esoteric state that you don't usually go into. Hypnosis is really just a state in between being asleep and being awake. And there's a little window as you're starting to fall asleep, there's a little window where your conscious mind is still awake a little bit. And that is essentially hypnosis. When your conscious mind is awake, but it's very relaxed. It's the same thing when you're waking up in the morning. When you're not quite awake yet, you're kind of in that in-between state. That window is essentially hypnosis, and that is the best place to be able to give yourself suggestions, being able to make changes that you can't normally make when you're wide awake. Let's see. We have a question from Isabella, and this is a very common question: will I bark like a dog or cluck like a chicken? And that's a question that it's related to a past question where, are you in control in hypnosis? It comes back to the control issue. There's really two objections that people who are uninformed have about hypnosis. One is, am I going to be controlled? And the other one is, am I going to be unconscious? Those are the only two things that people are worried about if they're worried about hypnosis. So related to the control issue, you're not, the idea of barking like a dog and that sort of thing comes from stage hypnosis, which is not real hypnosis. Stage hypnosis is not real hypnosis. It's really just a use of group dynamics. For example, you'll notice in every stage show, people will, the hypnotherapist will, or not a hypnotherapist, the stage hypnotist will bring up a lot of people, 20, 30 people, and they'll basically tell them to do something. And the people that do it get to stay up. Everyone else gets sat back down. So he filters for a group of maybe 5 obedient people that will do what they're told. And then the second factor is something called abstract conditioning, where if you tell someone to do a little thing, they're more likely to do a medium thing after that, and then a larger thing after that. So, and then by the end of the night, everyone just remembers the person barking like a dog or clucking like a chicken. So that's not real hypnosis. It does not involve any kind of hypnotic state. Hypnotherapy is much different, and absolutely the hypnotherapist can't force you to do anything and can't control your mind in hypnosis. He can only suggest and show you where to go, and you can choose to follow. And the other, while we're on the topic, the other misconception is that you are going to be unconscious, and that's not true. As I mentioned ago, it's kind of a state where you're very relaxed and you're not quite asleep yet, and you're kind of daydreaming. It's a daydreaming kind of state. Your conscious mind is still awake. You're still aware. It's kind of like if you're zoned out. Are you, if it's in the evening and you're kind of tired and you're zoned out on the couch, are you still in control of yourself? Of course you are. You could, if you wanted to, get up and get a drink or whatever. So you are in control of yourself the entire time in hypnosis. You can kind of think of it as sort of a drifting off state where you're still awake and paying attention, but you're just very relaxed.
But it's different than sleepwalking?
Yes. Well, that's interesting. Sleepwalking is, here, let me put it this way. If we've got, being awake, going to sleep, and then, deeper levels of sleep, just above sleep is, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever gotten that question before. That's an excellent question. A step above that is hypnosis. A step below that is sleepwalking. So you're still slightly awake when you're sleepwalking, but you're mostly asleep. In hypnosis, you're slightly asleep, but you're mostly awake.
That's interesting.
Okay, that's good. I've never gotten that question before. See, I knew I invited the right person here.
Thanks.
So, okay, well, let's see. Did you have some other questions?
A few. How many would you like?
Yeah, I'll take them.
Can hypnosis prevent anxiety in? Can it prevent anxiety in certain situations, or is there a permanent solution to chronic anxiety? For example, can you go in and if you're anxious about more than one thing, can you have hypnosis work on all three of the things at once? Or
that's another great question, and that's a question I wouldn't think to answer, but that's a fantastic question. No, that's a great question. I'm glad you're here because I wouldn't have thought to answer that. Generally, if someone has anxiety, and really if somebody has any kind of problem, they only do the problem in one way. So for example, let's just say that with anxiety, let's just say that someone has a pattern of, let's see, am I going to be able to pay the bills? Well, if I can't pay the bills, then this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and then I'll be even less likely to pay the bills. And they create a cycle, and that creates a little bit of anxiety every time they go around the cycle, and they go through it all day. So the anxiety builds up. If they do that with finances, they probably also do it with relationships. If they do it with relationships, they probably also do it with their health. So generally, people get good at one way of generating anxiety and use it on everything. Of course, they do it unconsciously. My job is to help identify that way. And what happens is there's an interesting dynamic with the way the brain works. Your brain is not good at making broad changes. So if we were trying to make a general change, like you'll have less anxiety, that wouldn't work very well. But your brain is very good at taking a specific, easy to understand change and generalizing it to similar things. So for example, what we would do is we would identify one thing that the person is having anxiety about, identify how they're doing it, fix it, and what would happen is it would sort of generalize itself to other areas of their life. So that's a process that maybe takes a lot less time than traditional therapy. Traditional therapy, brief therapy, starts at about 12 weeks. With hypnotherapy, it's usually 4 to 8 weeks at the most. So it's something that will happen much more quickly than with traditional therapy.
Great.
So, yeah. Let's see. I've got another question here from Juan, who says, my friend tried hypnosis to quit smoking and it didn't work. And and that's, I wouldn't say that I hear that very commonly, but hypnosis is not a magic wand. You have to have someone who's frankly a good hypnotherapist. So I would suggest, when you look for a hypnotherapist, it's not like a drug where anyone can prescribe it. It's, any doctor can prescribe it. It has to actually be, I would suggest someone who's been doing it for a while, who specifically works with that issue, and someone you feel comfortable with. So it's possible that the friend did not want to quit smoking. It's possible that the hypnotherapist didn't know what they were doing. There's a lot of possibilities, but the bottom line is it definitely can work. So I suggest finding someone who has a lot of experience with that issue, whatever the issue is, whether it's smoking or something else, and someone that you feel comfortable with.
Great.
So, okay, great. Did you have?
One more question for me.
Okay, super.
Well, as you know, I'm a violinist. All my life, I've suffered with performance anxiety, which has been severe detriment to my playing. Can you explain what hypnosis, how hypnosis can work for musicians, people that get on stage, people that get in front of an audience on a regular basis?
Sure, absolutely. And with any performance activity, whether it's sports, public speaking, anything that you're doing in front of people, where you have to perform in one way or the other, there's essentially three ways to think about that. You can either think about yourself, the other people, or the activity. If you think about yourself, it generates anxiety. Like, how am I doing? What do I need to do next? What do I look like? If you think about those things, that will generate anxiety. If you think about the other people, it will also generate anxiety. What do the people think? How are they going to respond? On the other hand, people who are very good at performance activities and don't have anxiety will focus on the topic, whether it's the task that they're doing, the performance itself, like the steps to the performance. You can do this now in your mind. You can think about if you do any performance activities, or if there's anything similar to a performance activity that you do, try thinking about that activity and think about yourself. Well, how do I look? How are they perceiving me? Or actually, that'd be the second one. How do I look? What am I supposed to do next? You'll notice it creates anxiety. Try thinking about it from their perspective, or about them. What do they think? What is their reaction going to be? That also creates anxiety. And now think about the actual activity itself, like your strategy for doing it, or your thing that you've practiced, or whatever your routine is. When you think about that, it decreases anxiety, increases your confidence. Do you find that to be the case?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
So the bottom line is, so there's always two parts to a solution. There's figuring out how you're making the problem, and figuring out what a better thing to do would be. And in the case of performance anxiety, and in fact in the case of everything that I work with, there are specific ways that create anxiety, or whatever the problem is, and there are specific ways that create the solution. And then the hypnosis is essentially designed to install and reinforce the correct way of thinking, feeling, and behaving. So, okay. And we do have one more question from Jennifer, who says, how is hypnotherapy different from affirmations? And affirmations have been popular for a long time, essentially telling yourself, they're really suggestions. A hypnotherapist would call affirmations suggestions. And just as meditation is hypnosis without the suggestions, affirmations are hypnosis without the meditation. So basically, if you took meditation and affirmations together and used them effectively, that would essentially be hypnosis. So affirmations are very good. They will have limited effect when you're not in hypnosis. In hypnosis, they'll have much greater effect. Likewise, if you just do hypnosis and don't have suggestions, then it'll be relaxing and centering and so on, but it won't be directed. There won't be, there might not be any long-lasting change. Hypnosis is essentially about getting you to the state where your brain can accept helpful changes and then making the changes. So, okay. Well, thank you all very much for your questions. We will be back next week. I'll post the time on the Facebook page. Thank you very much, Anjali, for the very intuitive questions. I appreciate it. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.